You're listening to Partnernomics Podcast, where we discuss the art and science of developing successful strategic partnerships. To learn more about the suite of Partnernomics solutions, visit partnernomics.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Partnernomics Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Brigman. And on today's show, we have Mr. Allan Adler with us. So Allan, man, I love the content that you're putting out. Love the conversations that we have. It's great to have some brethren in this force as we're trying to evolve this world of partnering that we both love.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. It's a pleasure to be with you. Can't wait for our conversation. Let's do it.
Allan is the managing partner of Digital Bridge Partners. And Allan and his team, his company, they do some awesome work to help organizations better leverage the power of partnership, similar but different to what Partnernomics does. But Allan is definitely one of those thought leaders in our space, putting out some great content. And so Allan and I wanted to get together and hit record and have some conversations around just what we're seeing, working with companies to see if we could provide some insights that hopefully help people hit that accelerator just a little bit harder.
Yeah, and I'll bet for sure we're going to be using the word ecosystem a lot because you got to do that today, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting. As we were chatting before we hit the record button, I'm glad that we're as an industry, as a group of professionals, we're trying to put some definition into this to get some commonality as to what's going on. Obviously, the ecosystem word is a big word. It's nothing new. We're just kind of putting definition to what it is and how all of these pieces work and fit together.
Right on. Yeah, it's amazing to me too that sometimes when you look forward, the inclination is to look backwards because that's what you're used to. And what's happening right now is there's so much change, as we know, going on, Mark, that if you don't look forward and anticipate where the puck is going, and instead you just steer to where the puck was before, you're going to find yourself sitting on the ice wondering why the entire hockey team is on the other side of the ice rink.
Man, so true. I think as you and I were chatting, the question, literally, I was having this conversation earlier this week, and it was centered around, is the word channel and ecosystem synonyms, mean the same thing? I was like, of course not. And so we kind of got into this conversation, peeling that onion a bit. And I know you did a piece on this a week or two ago that was really, really interesting to go through. But as the way that at least I see it, right? We have the channel is the way to monetize products and services, or these solutions, typically products, typically physical products that we have out there, pretty linear. And the idea with a channel is to try to make it as predictable as possible, but to move things from A to Z. But to the point that you were making earlier, Allan, the other piece of this is kind of the co-creation, the innovation, the building the next thing, right? Having those companies that are skating like Gretzky, right? Skating to where the puck is going to be, because that's where your customers are sitting and waiting for value. And so it's these circles, these Venn diagrams. And without a doubt, as you pointed out, the channel sits inside of the ecosystem.
Right. Well, we also talked earlier, to use another sports metaphor, of like a swimming pool. And the channel is like a swim lane in the swimming pool. And it's a swim lane with those little buoys so that, the channel stays in the swim lane. Because its job, to your point, is to monetize or to be a route to market for that which has already been built. And, they'll add value to it. But it's always historically been a stovepipe, a swim lane. It's been a linear thing. And everything on the other side of that buoyed swim lane is this like very kind of confusing and messy pool where you got all the kids floating around, swimming around. You keep running into people because you're like, wow, there's no orchestration here. It's like everyone's just kind of like running into each other, and then the swim lane of the channel is like this very sort of like linear, orderly thing. And I think part of the reason that we're all confused by the ecosystem is because there's so many different parties in the pool doing so many different things that now we are thinking we're in the ecosystem orchestration business, which is someone sitting on the side of the pool and saying, hey, why don't all the kids, you guys go over here, and then the parents go over there, and the people that want to swim really fast, we'll make some temporary lanes and we'll shut them down and open them up again. But it's the dynamic nature of that other part of the pool that is so much more complex and so much more difficult to operate. And that's, I think, why we're all pumped up about it, because there's so much innovation happening that there's a great opportunity to orchestrate and do so successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. I think, man, partnerships as a profession is finally fully arrived. But now we need to get organized, because I think there's a massive opportunity for the partnering lever to help organizations get absolute exponential growth. We see this everywhere. And to see how powerful partnerships can be for companies, or how powerful partnerships are for companies today, but also how much inefficiency we still see in that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we have a
Well,
massive amount
I've got
of
a provocative one for you. I know it's your podcast, so I'll got to be constrained myself in interviewing you. But here's a provocative one. You said something, the partnership profession has arrived. What I wonder about is partnership really a profession, or is it a competency that needs to be spread throughout the entire organization? Because historically, if you think about a channel, back to the swim lane analogy, when you have a channel professional, they sit as an adjunct to the direct sales organization, usually in their own silo. But when you look at that other swim lane not ecosystem pool, which got everyone partnering is everywhere. It's not in one spot. And so I wonder, is it a profession? I mean, certainly it's partially a profession because we have partnership leaders and other things like that. But is it more of a profession, or is it more of a skill set, mindset, competency that has to pervade the entire ecosystem landscape? What do you think of that?
Yeah, if I can, I'd say it's both. I mean, really, what are partnerships at their core? It's leveraging the capabilities and assets of others, whether it's internal to our organization, whether it's with our spouse, whether it's with our neighbor, whether it's with another company. And that's truly like what partnering is. It's, leveraging the capabilities of others to advance, hopefully, both parties. And so I think it's both. I think, to your point, and I know you've talked about an embedded partnering, and I want to dig into this one because this definitely hits on some points that I'm passionate about as well. But within organizations in general, I think that partnering is a culture. Partnering is a skill set, and we need to sharpen the sword, sharpen our skills, both internally and externally, to fully leverage the power of partnerships. Right. So you have these different organizations, these different lanes. Right. Let's continue with the swim lanes. You have the marketing lane of the business. You have the product lane of the business. You have the sales lane of the business. You have the legal lane of the business, right? You have all these different departments, they're lanes. I think that the way that companies traditionally take, the direct sales approach, the way that companies traditionally go to market is vastly different, and in a lot of ways, completely opposite, or very to the antithesis of how you do that through partnerships. And so many of the companies that we work for, they start to understand that partnering truly is a culture. It's a move from independence to interdependence.
Yeah, that's right on.
Which is scary.
Yeah. And
Which is scary.
In fact, as part the channel swim lane was called independent, not interdependent. And partnering, there's no question. I mean, it's interesting as you think about the swim lane analogy with all these different lines of business, marketing, product, sales, customer success, legal, what have you. It's almost like maybe partnering is really an overlay. It's not a swim lane in of itself, right? Although it probably has to have its own swim lane element. Like you have to have partner ops and partner orchestration, ecosystem orchestration. But if you don't, our concept of embedded partnering is that partnering lives in the line of business swim lanes. It lives in marketing, it lives in product, it lives in sales, it lives in customer success, it lives in legal. Because if it doesn't overlay on top of those swim lanes, as in every swim lane has partnering in it, then you have the classic friction that takes place today with most partnership leaders who are constantly running up against the swim lane and say, no, we don't do partners. And then we have chaos or missed opportunity.
I think you're exactly right, Allan. And, I guess there's some larger organizations, or especially in the channel piece, but obviously, as we've talked about, partnering, and especially this ecosystem world and word is so much bigger and broader than that. Some of the traditional big channel programs, right, they have a marketing piece, they have a finance piece, they have some of these resource groups within that partnering structure. But I would say the vast majority of companies, they're probably borrowing, marketing expertise, product expertise, other pieces from the mothership business. But what we have run into, what we see is, let's say the CMO, he or she has, their boxes they're trying to check, their objectives they're trying to capture for this month or this quarter. And if they're not incentivized to help the partnering lane, they're creating headwinds instead of the tailwinds that the partnering organization needs.
That's right.
If we don't have like the strong, clear leadership from the top, then it's almost like whenever organizations say, we're going to start doing this partnering thing, I call it growing the third eye, growing the third ear, growing the third arm. The organization, if they don't understand it, they throw up their arms, they push back, and they don't support it.
Yeah, I think that's right on the money. Our concept of embedded partnering starts with the question of who is responsible for bringing the partner orientation, the partner value, the partner contribution, the partner KPIs, the partner resources to the swim lanes that need to support partnering. And in an ideal world, it's the CEO top down. And the CEO wakes up and says, I get it. I think you're going to land a quote in a little bit about what CEOs say about B2B partnering, which is pretty exciting. But many CEOs are still kind of hemming and hawing about it because they didn't really understand the ecosystem. So then the question is, does the partner leader have enough entrepreneurial moxie to go into those swim lanes and do the work to embed partnering? And it'd be interesting to chat a little bit about how the partnership leader creates the alignment. I was talking about alignment with you on one of your podcasts, on one of your blogs that I thought was great. You did on trust.
Yeah.
And in there was the concept of alignment.
Yeah.
And I commented that really, as important it is to align with your partner, it's just as important or more important to align within your organization. So again, isn't it the partnership leader's job to entrepreneur that alignment to ensure that partnering gets embedded into those swim lanes?
Man, you have so much there to unpack, Allan. I love, what you're sharing. Some thoughts come to my mind is, number one, traditionally, at least what I've seen, even the most senior partnering professionals aren't necessarily at the C-suite yet. And so, partnering professionals, I call them air traffic controllers, right? They're working cross-functionally across, amongst these different groups and teams, but yet none of them report to them. Right? As a partnering lead, I'm not going to be writing the annual review for my counterpart in marketing that's supporting me, or my counterpart in, let's say, sales, or my counterpart somewhere else. And so that's truly where leadership comes in and influence comes in. But, and you hit this right square on the head, Allan, that is, the CEO needs to be the biggest cheerleader for partnering. If he or she is not on board and making sure that the full C-suite, and then all the way down, that people understand that we have a partnering strategy, we are partner friendly. This is our organization. This is the new way. This is the new approach. If they don't have that, man, I mean, you're literally swimming upstream all the time. And so many of us can relate with that. And man, that's exhausting.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I think that's great. And, this whole idea that I do think the partnership leaders have to, even if they're not on the C-suite, have to essentially say, my job is to partner with those lines of business not tactically, strategically. I think one of the challenges they have in that air traffic control example you gave is that whenever you're trying to achieve partnering or embed partnering on a transactional level, and the standard operating procedures within those swim lanes, marketing, sales, customer success, and product, the four biggies, right, are not partner friendly. That is that they're frictional rather than leverageable, then every single thing you do is a heavy lift. So literally feel like, it's Groundhog Day. You're reinventing the wheel of why can't we get enablement? Why can't we get co-marketing? Why can't we get integrations? Why can't we get co-selling? Why can't we drive the integrations we built through our customer success? Everything's a heavy lift until the standard operating procedures shift and become more partner friendly. So that's really the biggest heartache, right? For most partnership leaders is that they're running around doing random acts of partnering instead of being an agent of change to alter the standard operating procedures. And I don't believe that we have to have the CEO leading it. It's a lot easier if they do, but I've seen success where partner leaders say, you know what, rather than having my own team, I want partner people living in the swim lanes of the organizations that I need to help me to go to market with: marketing, sales, customer success, product. And if you can get that outcome and get them to share KPIs or share incentives, share outcomes, that's an ideal world. And I don't think it's impossible. I think it's the kind of thing where every partnership leader, when they see the same story of, oh my God, another day where I have to fight a fire because the standard operating procedures and incentives and reward models and C-suite orientations and OKRs do not support partnering, is another day that I'm going to not really be delivering partnering to my employer. So so hopefully CEOs will be paying attention too, so the partnership leaders don't have to work so hard.
Yeah, well, I think you hit it. I think the leads of these different departments need to be incentivized to support the partnership lane. If they always see, oh hell, here comes the partnering guy again, and they see all of that work as being a debit to them, but it's not helping them kind of retire what their core function is, or a piece of what their function, then they're always going to see us as, well, that's just the plus one thing that we have to do, or we will do if we have time. I think as we've talked about, there's partnering is truly becoming a core function in these successful organizations, and it's really a question of maturation. I mean, who's going to mature and see and understand what this adjustment needs to be, and then take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah. One of the good things that partner leaders have going for them is that the story to drive that embedded partnering vis-a-vis aligning with the heads of the swim lanes who you need to co-own a KPI for your partner model. The story is not a difficult story. In other words, finding the way to the hearts and mind of a leader of a line of business is nothing more difficult than simply to then say to them, what are your measures and how can I show you how partners can contribute to your success?
Man, I love that. I love that, because that's what partnering is at the end of the day, right? We have our strategy of what we're trying to do as an organization to grow this forward. We can do it organically, in-house. That's a losing proposition as we go forward. We could do it through acquisition. We can pull out the checkbook and buy our way down that road. Or number three, we do this through partnering. But partnering, when done correctly, it should enable all of our internal teams to be able to do more with less. But I think it's just a matter of, I love how you said that entrepreneurial spirit, that entrepreneurial mindset of these partnering professionals to be able to paint this vision, to architect what needs to be done, to influence and to lead people to get them, rowing the boat in the same direction.
Now, you had a really good stat about CEOs saying B2B partnering was like really important for growth. What was that stat?
Yeah, so KPMG, yeah, man, I love this one. KPMG did a study. It's about almost 2 years now old, but 38% of CEOs said that business-to-business partnering is their number one strategy for growth. And so it was significantly higher than organic, significantly higher than mergers, acquisitions, outsourcing, all these organic, these different alternatives. 38% said it was their core, their number one strategy for growth. And that's a significant number. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say it was a 15% increase over just the prior year.
That's great.
And so I think, as you point out in your blogs and the different thought leadership pieces you're putting out there, I mean, technology all across the board and the globalization of the economy, the further globalization of the economy is making partnering be an absolute requirement. I don't think it's even an option.
And it's absolutely right. But that's another job of embedded partnering. Like we talked about embedding partnership DNA into the swim lanes of the departments. But to the point we were making earlier, it's how do you embed it into the heart and mind of your CEO? Well, if 38% of all CEOs a couple of years ago said B2B partnering is the number one growth, and you, CEO, who I don't even work for because I don't report to you, but maybe the CRO who I report to would help me with this conversation, is like, why isn't it our number one way of growing? It's really a provocative question to say, partnering has become this universal hockey stick of growth. And when I look at our organization, it seems like we're doing a lot of tactical stuff, but we're not strategic, AKA we don't have embedded partnering. We don't have an influence orientation. We don't have product and sales readiness to partner. We don't have a partner first mindset. We don't have a partnering culture. Why? Now the CEO may empower you back to say, well, because I don't know how we're going to get it done. So then the one job every partnership leader has to have, right, is to show their company why partnering is your company's number one way to grow. And that data point from KPMG, I think, is great ammo for that conversation, because if your CEO isn't getting it, it's kind of up to you to either get them to get it or look for a new job.
Yeah, could not agree more. And I think that is the two pieces. I would say if your CEO is neutral on partnerships, kind of like show me, then maybe you're up for the challenge. If the light bulb isn't off, going off for them, I would definitely find a new place to work, because Borders, Blockbuster, Kodak, you're going to end up like those companies, right? We're going to be afraid to change. We're going to bury our head in the sands, and we're going to be passed by everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, Allan, another statistic I'll throw out there as far as, talking about CEOs, right? Accenture did a study a couple of years ago. 76% of CEOs say that their business model is going to be unrecognizable in 5 years. So further showing that CEOs get it, or at least get that they are going through this massive change. But I think they're trying to figure out, what does this mean for us? How do we adjust? What do we need to do to skate where the puck is going? How can we figure out where the puck is going?
Yeah. Well, that's a common data point about, business models being unrecognizable. I mean, if you really unpack why, it's usually a function of two things. One, digital transformation, which is reinventing the concept of the organization. And the second piece is platform business models. And I bring that one up because I'm particularly passionate about platform business models as being kind of like the ultimate ecosystem driver, because a platform business model is dependent upon a vibrant ecosystem. Yeah. But it really, comes back to that fundamental question, which is, if your CEO doesn't get that partnering is number one growth, it's either true because of one or two reasons. Number one, because that CEO doesn't understand that the business model they have needs to change, or we haven't done a good job as partnership leaders showing them how the business model that we have is actually one that many of our peers are really using to drive massive growth. Yeah. There's really the only two answers. And I think if you discover that your business model is probably wrong, that's a pretty good indication of the propensity of your company to grow. But most of the time, it's not that the business model is wrong. It's that we haven't shown the analogs to get the resources that we need to drive the change. And so that's why I come back to that. Have you demonstrated why and how partnering will help your company achieve the fastest growth it could ever achieve? And then do you have a roadmap with your CEO agreeing to it, that you're going to follow the script to allow that to manifest.
If I think with partnering, you have the chicken and egg thing. It's like one of the biggest pitfalls that I see is, finally the CEO or whomever at an organization, let's say they're going to stand up a partnering function for the first time. Like, okay, sick of hearing it. Here's a few $1 million, whatever the number is, we're going to stand up this partnering function and get this thing going. Well, more often than not, and I'm talking like 95% has been my experience, that senior leader said, okay, so I look at the sales, I look at the direct sales organization, I see their flow. Okay, so I want you to match that because I'm looking for ROI, obviously. But inevitably, these partnering teams, partnering functions, standing up these relationships, it takes so much longer than what the senior executives, than the runway that they're willing to give them. At a minimum,
that's the point.
What we see is 12, 18, even 24 months sometimes to stand up this organization, to get it well-oiled, to give the partnership leaders the ability to work internally, collaborate, make those relationships, get the backing and the support that they need from those other organizations, and start to generate revenue through the partnership lane. And if there's only, let's say, 12 months given, that's like, oh, well, it was a failure. And they throw in the towel before, there's not enough runway given there. So that's a slippery slope.
True. No, I think that's probably the biggest headwind that partnership leaders face is that if you think of it like, from the metaphor of the runway, but you add flying the plane, building the plane, building the runway, building the depot that fixes the plane. All these things have to be done at the same time. And inevitably, when you have so many moving parts, the performance is just not there yet. You have to have a lot of those systems up and running at a certain level of productivity to see the returns. And unfortunately, partnering is when it's done, when it's mature, your 0 to 60 is way faster than the other alternative investment models. But the problem, to your point, is to get that 0 to 60 acceleration rate, you have to have patience, because at the beginning, it actually accelerates slower than the other ones. And so it looks like the return on investment is weaker, and then people pull the plug. So this is now back to our original conversation about, does the CEO really understand it? And at the end of the day, the only way around that problem, I think, for partnership leaders is to take a low-hanging fruit approach, which is to figure out amongst all the different partnering models that you have in your ecosystem, which are the ones that have the highest propensity to deliver a compelling leading indicator. And I think we should spend a little time on this because people really mess this one up. In the old channel days, channels was all about sourced revenue, right? So you were all measuring how much ACV did the channel generate for us. It was a very kind of post indicator as opposed to leading indicator type model. To make partnering work, you have to sell leading indicators. You have to show that if you achieve that leading indicator, 2 months, 3 months, 2 quarters later, you're going to have a lagging indicator. So you create this connection between early success, which is not going to be ACV, and is not going to be the conventional measures of return on investment. But if the data on that leading indicator is compelling enough, anybody smart can look at the post-sales result or the closed won result in some number of quarters later and go, oh my God, this is incredible. And so the two messages there are: find the low-hanging fruit and sell the leading indicators. If you can do that, then you can begin to build momentum for not only keeping the investment, but increasing it. Because we all know, right? If you put $1 million in and you get early results, if you put 2 million more in, you're going to get even more. And so you've got to be asking for more money, but you better have a good story if you want to get the funding.
I couldn't agree more on the leading indicators piece, because success breeds success, failures unfortunately breeds failures. But as we're standing up these new relationships with partnering, so many times we just look at the outcome, the goal, that lagging indicator. And a lot of times it takes a long time for that lagging indicator to get here. Like we just said, 18, 24 months sometimes. But the leading indicators can be your wins as well. And it lets you know that you're on track for it. And if you find yourself behind, you can use it as a lever, put more resources to whatever that leading indicator is. And as long as it is truly a leading indicator, if it's predictive of your outcome, you'll accelerate your success.
Yeah, that's also the reason that partnering has to be strategic and not tactical. It's not to say that you don't have to be good at the tactics. You have to be good at the tactics because execution beats strategy for breakfast. So does culture. But you have to have a strategy. You have to have a framework and an orientation that says, if we do the following over the next number of multiple quarters, we are going to transform our business from X to Y to Z. So the leading indicators are aiming toward a strategic outcome that also has tactical relevance, because that's how you get a leading indicator is you roll up all the tactics and it drives you toward the R in OKR, right?
Yeah.
But if it's not strategic, you're going to continuously be frustrated by the urgencies that, back to our earlier conversation, you have not embedded partnering into the functions. And so whenever you ask for help to drive those leading indicators, it's like pushing a rock up a hill. And so that's the reason why, if you're a CEO and you think partnering is important, you think it's important, you're not 100% sure, hire the senior partnering person, not the junior one. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a senior pro leading your partner organization and you have a bird who sits at the nest and wants to be fed, you ain't going to get anywhere, because we all know how big the change is. Change is profound.
Allan, this has been fun. Thank you so much for hopping in here and knocking this out. We are definitely going to have to do this many, many more times.
Looking forward to it.
Future. Awesome. Well, have a good day, and we'll be checking in with you soon.
Looking forward to it. Take care.
Partnernomics Podcast is brought to you by Partnernomics. Learn how to leverage the power of partnership. To listen to more episodes of Partnernomics Podcast, visit partnernomics.com.